The first call about the drift came in at 0400, clipped and short. 4 colonies gone quiet inside 9 hours. No debris, no distress beyond the first 90 seconds. By the time my unit reached Aldwych, the count was 6, and nobody in command would say the word stopped out loud, because nobody had stopped it yet. Aldwych was a grain town on the low end of Calder's Reach, the kind of place that grew wheat under a thin blue sky and shipped half of it off-world before anyone local got hungry enough to ask why. We had 4 hours to clear 900 people through one gate in the perimeter fence, a gap in the wire just wide enough for a transport to nose through, and the drift was already visible on the horizon as a long gray smear, like weather that ate things. On the command channel, other handlers were reporting in from other worlds, other gates, in the same flat voice I was using. Calder's Reach was the 41st colony on that season's tally, and the pattern across every one before it was the same. It didn't stop, it didn't tire, and whatever stopped it in one place had not been the same thing twice. Command wanted a unified countermeasure. Command was going to be disappointed for a while yet. Birch lay in the grass beside the gate, the way he always did before a working shift, ears soft, head on his paws, watching the line of evacuees without much interest. 9 years old, 160 pounds of St. Bernard gone gray around the muzzle, the kind of dog people mistake for furniture until he stands up. He'd been a search dog before he was mine. Avalanche work, 2 seasons on a mountain colony I never saw. And by the time he came to me, he'd already decided that most emergencies didn't require him to get up quickly. The HESC liaison assigned to our gate, a tall, pale officer named Sale Vire, looked at him for a long moment and then looked at me. "That is a comfort animal," she said. It wasn't a question. HESC don't really ask questions. They make observations and wait for you to correct them. "He's a working dog," I said. "He is lying down. That's the work." She didn't answer that. She had a perimeter to run and 40 turret emplacements going active along the fence line, humming up through their warm-up cycles, and she had decided, reasonably, that the turrets were the part of this operation worth her attention. For the first hour, she was right. The turret line held a clean kill radius out past the wire, and the drift, when it finally crossed into range, broke against that radius the way every report said it would. Thinned, scattered, regrouped, came again. Routine, almost. I kept the evac line moving through the gate in groups of 20, Birch 10 feet off my left boot, not moving, not needing to. It stopped being routine around the second hour, when the turrets started dying. Nobody had modeled a drift swarm at the density we were seeing. The official briefing had called it a Class 2 event. Whatever crossed Aldwich's wire that afternoon was not a Class 2 event. The first 3 turrets seized from sheer thermal load and didn't come back online. The 4th kept firing into a gap that had already closed, chewing through ammunition on a target that wasn't there anymore, because the drift had stopped moving in straight lines and started moving like water finding the bottom of a hill. Sale's voice on comms went from clipped to fast, and fast with HESC is close to panic. "Fall back the gate," she said. "Compress to the inner fence." "There's 600 people still on this side of the wire," I said. "There will be 600 people on this side of the wire, whether we compress or not. Move your animal and fall back." I didn't move my animal. I want to be honest about why. It wasn't strategy. I didn't have a plan. I'd run out of orders to give, and the only thing I had left that felt like doing something was standing where I was already standing, with the dog who wasn't going anywhere either. The line backed up at the gate, the way lines do when the people at the front can see what's coming, and the people at the back can't. A girl near the front, 8, maybe 9, her ankle wrapped in field gauze gone gray with dust, went down when the crowd behind her surged, and the woman trying to carry her couldn't get more than 4 steps before the crush closed in again. Nobody behind them was being cruel. They were just people, and the gray smear on the horizon had stopped being a smear and started being a sound. Birch got up. He didn't run anywhere. That's the part I still have trouble explaining to people who weren't there. He stood, walked the 10 feet to where the girl had gone down, and lay back down across the gap in front of her, between her and the open ground, 160 pounds of dog taking up exactly the width of the gate, and not 1 inch more. He put his chin on his paws again. He looked, if anything, bored. "Move him," Sale said, on comms, watching the same feed I was. "No," I said. The drift reached the gate 11 seconds later. I know it was 11 seconds because I counted them, out loud, without meaning to, the way you count things you can't do anything else about. I'd been told, everyone had been told, that the drift didn't recognize hardware as a threat the way a predator recognizes another predator. It read heat, motion, density. It read claimed ground, the way a flock reads a posted fence line, not because the fence could hurt it, but because something had already decided that ground belonged to someone else, and going around cost the swarm nothing. The turrets it had simply outlasted, the way water outlasts a dam. What it had never been tested against, because nobody builds a defense line out of it on purpose, was 160 pounds of animal that had spent its whole life occupying ground and had no intention, none at all, of finding out what was on the other side of it. The front edge of the swarm split 8 feet out from where Birch lay and went around him on both sides, the way water goes around a stone it didn't expect to find in the middle of a known riverbed. It didn't slow. It didn't test the gap. The sound of it changed at the split, the long flat hiss bending into 2 thinner ones, passing the gate on either flank, close enough that the grass on both sides of Birch lay flat for a second, and then stood back up, and then it was past, already narrowing back together 50 feet beyond the wire, like nothing had interrupted it at all. It simply treated the half-meter of ground under that dog as already spoken for, and found somewhere else to be. I got the girl up. Her mother got an arm under her on the other side. We went through what was left of the gap, Birch holding his ground a breath longer, and behind us the line came through in a ragged column, 20 at a time, then 40, until somebody at the inner fence started actually counting, instead of just screaming for people to hurry. It took 4 minutes for 600 people to cross a gate that should have been overrun in under 1. Birch held the gap the whole time without standing up again, except once, near the end, when an old man's legs gave out 8 feet short of the line, and the dog got up, walked over, and let the man get a fist into his harness to finish the distance standing. Then he went back to the gate and lay down again. "Hold," I told him, once, quietly, which was the only thing I said to him the entire afternoon that wasn't his name. Sale found me afterward, on the inner side of the fence, with the turret line dead behind us, and the drift already a smear again, moving on to whatever was next on its route. She looked at Birch for a long time. He had his head on his paws and his eyes half shut, the same posture he'd had at 0400, like none of it had cost him anything at all. "I am going to have to write a report," she said, "that says the wire held. The wire didn't hold. I know. I am still going to have to write that the wire held, because the alternative is writing that we evacuated 600 people through a gap that a comfort animal was lying in, and nobody above my rank is going to read that sentence and believe it. Write whatever you need to write." She crouched down, slowly, the way you do around something you've decided to respect, and held out the back of her hand, the way Hesk do when they're asking, not taking. Birch lifted his head, considered her for a second, and let her touch his ear, once, before he put his chin back down. "I filed my own report that night. I kept it short. I wrote that the gate held, that the line crossed clean, that no personnel were lost. In the line for equipment notes, where you're supposed to list what worked, I wrote one word, and left it there for whoever read it next, to make of what they wanted. Dog.